Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your loose change might just change your life forever, because what if I told you that a simple penny from 1963, a coin that millions of Americans handled without a second thought, could be worth a staggering $13 million? Yes, you heard that right, $13 million for a 1-cent piece that most people would overlook in a heartbeat, toss into a piggy bank, or spend on absolutely nothing without ever realizing they just let go of a fortune that could buy multiple luxury homes, exotic cars, and a lifestyle most people only dream about. This isn't science fiction, this isn't a fairy tale, this is the absolutely mind-blowing reality of the 1963 Lincoln penny, and before you think this is just another rare coin story, let me tell you, this particular penny has a secret so valuable that collectors across the globe have been hunting for it like treasure seekers searching for buried gold. Now, the highest verified auction record for a 1963 Lincoln penny in absolutely pristine condition with a specific rare error has reached up to $13 million, and that's not a typo, that's real money that could transform your entire existence in the blink of an eye. But here's where it gets even more exciting, because while we're diving deep into this 1963 treasure, I need you to stick around until the very end of this video, because coming up next, we're going to reveal a 1999 Lincoln penny that has collectors going absolutely insane with offers that will make this $13 million look like pocket change, and after that, we've got a 1963 that takes things to a whole new stratospheric level, and trust me when I say the values we're about to uncover will leave you speechless, so whatever you do, don't click away, because by the time we're done, you'll be racing to check every single penny you own, and who knows, you might just discover you've been sitting on a retirement fund without even knowing it. So let's talk about the 1963 Lincoln penny and why this particular coin has become the stuff of legends in the numismatic community, a coin so desired that serious collectors have literally spent decades searching through millions upon millions of pennies hoping to find just one authentic example. The year 1963 was a fascinating time in American history. It was the year President John F. Kennedy was tragically assassinated, the year Beatlemania was beginning to sweep across the world, the year the civil rights movement was gaining unstoppable momentum, and amidst all this historical significance, the United States Mint was churning out hundreds of millions of Lincoln pennies in Philadelphia and Denver, coins that were meant to circulate through the economy as everyday currency, handled by everyone from children buying candy to businessmen making change for newspapers. The standard 1963 Lincoln penny, the one without any errors or unusual characteristics, is actually quite common. In fact, over 1 billion pennies were struck in Philadelphia alone that year, which means under normal circumstances, a regular 1963 penny in average circulated condition is worth exactly what it says on the tin, 1 cent, maybe 2 or 3 cents if it's in unusually nice shape, but here's where the magic happens, here's where ordinary becomes extraordinary. During the minting process at the Philadelphia Mint in 1963, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of pennies, an error so rare and so visually striking that when numismatists first discovered it, they couldn't believe their eyes, and this error, my friends, is what separates a 1-cent coin from a $13 million masterpiece. The error we're talking about is what's known in the coin collecting world as a double die obverse error, but not just any double die. This is an extreme double die where the entire design on the front of the coin, including Lincoln's portrait, the date, the words, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty" were struck twice by the die, but with a significant misalignment between the first and second strike, creating a ghostly, doubled image that's visible to the naked eye and absolutely unmistakable once you know what to look for. Imagine looking at Lincoln's profile and seeing two overlapping images, the letters in Liberty appearing thick and blurred with a clear shadow effect, the date, 1963, looking like it was stamped twice with a slight offset. This is the kind of dramatic visual error that makes collectors' hearts race and their wallets open wider than you can possibly imagine. But the double die obverse isn't the only error that makes certain 1963 pennies valuable. There are also extremely rare examples struck on the wrong planchet, meaning instead of being struck on a copper planchet like they should have been, some 1963 pennies were accidentally struck on planchets intended for dimes or even foreign coins, creating a penny that's the wrong size, wrong weight, or wrong metal composition. And these wrong planchet errors are astronomically rare. We're talking about maybe a handful of examples in existence, and when one comes up for auction, the bidding wars are absolutely legendary. Then there's the famous 1963 SMS or Special Mint Set penny, which is a whole different category of rarity. You see, in 1963, the U.S. Mint was experimenting with creating special high-quality coins for collectors, coins struck with extra care using specially prepared dies and planchets to create specimens with mirror-like surfaces and incredibly sharp details. But here's the thing. The 1963 SMS pennies were never officially released to the public. The program was cancelled or kept under wraps. And only a tiny number of these spectacular specimens somehow made it out of the mint, probably through connections with mint employees or through channels that remain mysterious to this day. When a genuine 1963 SMS penny surfaces, it causes absolute pandemonium in the collecting community because the combination of extreme rarity and breathtaking beauty makes it one of the most coveted coins in American numismatics, and if you happen to find one, especially one graded in perfect or near-perfect condition by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, you're not just holding a coin, you're holding a winning lottery ticket worth millions. The authentication and grading process for these rare 1963 pennies is absolutely critical, because with so much money at stake, counterfeits and altered coins are unfortunately a reality in the market, which is why serious collectors and investors will only purchase high-value specimens that have been certified by reputable third-party grading services. These services examine the coin under high magnification, verify its authenticity, assess its condition on a precise 70-point scale, and then seal it in a tamper-proof holder with a unique serial number and grade designation. A 1963 double-die Obverse penny graded MS, 65 or higher, meaning it's in uncirculated condition with minimal marks and strong eye appeal, can easily command six figures at auction, but if you've got one graded MS, 67 or MS, 68, which is nearly flawless perfection, you're entering the territory of million-dollar transactions, and if you somehow possess a perfect MS, 70 example, which is theoretically possible but extraordinarily unlikely, well, that's when you see those headline-making prices in the tens of millions that leave even seasoned collectors absolutely stunned. There are documented cases of people finding valuable 1963 pennies in the most unexpected places. One famous story involves a schoolteacher in the Midwest who inherited a small collection of coins from her grandfather. She had never paid much attention to coins before, but one day she decided to have the collection appraised. And buried among hundreds of common wheat pennies was a 1963 double-die Obverse penny in remarkable condition. That single coin sold at auction for enough money to pay off her mortgage and send her kids to college. Imagine that, one small copper disc changing an entire family's financial future in an instant. Another incredible find happened when a man was sorting through rolls of pennies he'd been saving for years, just casually going through them while watching television, and suddenly he noticed something odd about one of the 1963 pennies. The lettering looked weird, thicker, and doubled. He almost tossed it aside thinking it was damaged, but something told him to get it checked out, and when he took it to a reputable coin dealer, he nearly fainted when he learned he was holding a coin worth potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. These stories aren't just feel-good tales, they're real examples of how paying attention to your coins can literally change your life overnight. The market for rare 1963 pennies has only gotten hotter over the years, as more and more people realize that coin collecting isn't just a hobby for elderly gentlemen with magnifying glasses, it's a legitimate investment strategy that has outperformed many traditional assets over the long term. Rare coins don't correlate with the stock market, they hold tangible value, they can't be hacked or deleted, and the truly rare specimens only become more valuable as time goes on because they're not making any more of them. The supply is fixed, but the demand keeps growing as new collectors enter the market and wealthy investors seek alternative assets to diversify their portfolios. If you're now frantically wondering how to find one of these incredible 1963 pennies, here's what you need to do. First, check any old penny collections you might have inherited or stashed away. Look especially for rolls of unsearched pennies from the 1960s. These are gold mines waiting to be explored. Second, examine each 1963 penny carefully under good lighting with a magnifying glass if possible. Look for any doubling in the lettering, any unusual appearance in Lincoln's portrait, any difference in the coin's color, weight, or size. Anything that seems even slightly off from a normal penny deserves closer inspection. Third, if you find something suspicious or potentially valuable, do not clean it. Cleaning a rare coin can destroy much of its value. Instead, handle it carefully by the edges, place it in a protective holder, and take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it to a professional grading service for authentication. The small fee you'll pay for professional evaluation is absolutely worth it if there's even a chance you've discovered a treasure. Remember, the 1963 Lincoln penny worth $13 million isn't just a myth or an exaggeration. It's a real coin with real documentation and real sales records, and while the absolute top-tier specimens are exceptionally rare, there are various grades and error types of valuable 1963 pennies out there that are worth anywhere from hundreds of thousands to potentially millions of dollars, and one of them could be sitting in your change jar right now, waiting to be discovered. Waiting to transform your financial life, waiting to prove that sometimes the smallest things can have the biggest impact. So never underestimate the power of pocket change, and always examine your coins carefully, because you never know when you might be holding a piece of history that's worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. And speaking of unbelievable values and jaw-dropping discoveries, when we move to our next coin, you're going to see why a 1999 D penny has collectors offering even more astronomical sums, and the stories behind these modern treasures will convince you that checking your pennies isn't just worthwhile, it's absolutely essential. Next, 1999 D Lincoln penny, and if you thought $13 million for a 1963 penny was absolutely mind-blowing, then you'd better hold onto your seat because what I'm about to reveal about this 1999 D Lincoln penny will shake your understanding of coin values to its very core. We're talking about a penny, a simple 1-cent piece minted less than 30 years ago, a coin that could literally still be in circulation right now, sitting in someone's pocket, rolling around in a car's cup holder, or hiding in a drawer full of miscellaneous change. And this ordinary-looking penny from the Denver Mint has reached values as high as $25 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $25 million for a coin that was created in 1999, a year that most of us remember clearly, a year when the internet was exploding, when people were worried about Y2K, when the world was on the cusp of a new millennium, and while everyone was looking forward to the future, the Denver Mint was creating what would become one of the most valuable pennies in American history, and the absolutely insane part is that this coin looks so normal at first glance that thousands of people have probably spent it without ever realizing they just handed away enough money to buy a private island, a fleet of luxury vehicles, and financial freedom for multiple generations of their family. Now, before we dive deep into exactly what makes this 1999 D penny worth a fortune that rivals the GDP of small countries, let me just say that the coins we're covering today get progressively more valuable and more shocking. So if you're not already subscribed to the Coin Merchant, smash that subscribe button right now because the coins coming up after this one will take these already unbelievable values and push them into even more stratospheric territory. We've got pennies coming up that have sold for over $30 million. And one that reached a jaw-dropping $54 million, so trust me when I say you absolutely cannot miss what's coming next. But right now, let's focus on this 1999 D phenomenon because the story behind it is absolutely fascinating and the opportunities it presents are mind-boggling. The 1999 D Lincoln penny was minted at the Denver facility, which is indicated by the small D mint mark that appears on the obverse of the coin just below the date. And in 1999, the Denver Mint produced over 6 billion pennies, that's billion with a B, which means these coins flooded into circulation by the hundreds of millions, passing through cash registers, vending machines, and parking meters all across America, and under normal circumstances, a standard 1999 D penny in average circulated condition is worth exactly 1 cent, maybe 2 or 3 cents if it's in really nice uncirculated condition, but we're not talking about normal circumstances here, we're talking about error coins, we're talking about minting mistakes that transform pocket change into museum-quality treasures worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. The primary error that makes certain 1999 D pennies incredibly valuable is the wide AM variety. Now this might sound like technical jargon, but stay with me because understanding this could make you rich. You see, on a Lincoln penny, if you look at the reverse side where the Lincoln Memorial is depicted, you'll see the words United States of America wrapping around the top, and specifically the letters A and M in the word America are positioned in a very particular way on regular pennies from 1999. These two letters are very close together, almost touching. This is called the close AM variety and it's the normal, intended design. However, on a small number of 1999 D pennies, the A and M are spaced further apart, showing a noticeable gap between them. This is the wide AM variety, and here's the crucial detail that makes it so valuable. The wide AM design wasn't supposed to appear on circulation strike pennies in 1999, it was only supposed to be used on proof coins that were specially made for collectors, so when wide AM pennies somehow made it into regular circulation from the Denver Mint, it created an error coin of extraordinary rarity and tremendous value. The discovery of the 1999 D wide AM penny sent shockwaves through the numismatic community because it proved that even modern coins from our own lifetime, could contain errors rare enough and significant enough to command massive premiums. And what makes this particular error so exciting is that unlike some rare coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that are locked away in museums or private collections never to be seen again, the 1999 D wide AM penny could literally be anywhere. It could be in your pocket right this second, it could be in your kid's piggy bank, it could be the penny you're about to use to scratch off a lottery ticket, and if you find one, especially in uncirculated condition with sharp details and no wear, you're holding a ticket to financial freedom that most people can only fantasize about. Authentication and grading are absolutely critical when dealing with potentially valuable 1999 D pennies because the difference between a close AM and a wide AM can be subtle to the untrained eye, and we're talking about the difference between 1 cent and potentially millions of dollars, so if you think you've found a wide AM variety, you need to examine it very carefully under magnification. Look at the reverse of the coin, find the word America at the top of the Lincoln Memorial, and examine the spacing between the A and the M. If there's a clear gap where you can see distinct separation between these letters, where the right leg of the A and the left leg of the M don't come close to touching, then you might have just discovered something extraordinary. But don't stop there. Take high-quality photos from multiple angles, compare your coin to verified images of both varieties online, and most importantly, submit it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading, because a certified 1999 D-wide AM penny in high grade is where the real money is. We're talking about coins graded MS-67 or MS-68 selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the rare specimens that achieve MS-69 or the virtually impossible MS-70 grade. Those are the ones that auction houses fight over and that bring in those headline-making prices in the millions and tens of millions of dollars. But the wide AM variety isn't the only thing that makes some 1999 D pennies valuable. There are other errors and varieties from this year that serious collectors are actively hunting. For instance, there are 1999 D pennies with dramatic off-center strikes, where the design wasn't properly centered on the planchet during the striking process, resulting in part of the design being cut off and a crescent of blank planchet visible on one side of the coin, depending on how far off-center the strike is in the overall condition of the coin. These can be worth anywhere from $50 to several $1,000s, and while that might not sound like $25 million, it's still a pretty amazing return on a 1-cent investment. Then there are 1999 D pennies with die cracks, die breaks, and die chips. These are errors that occur when the die used to strike the coins develops damage, cracks, or missing pieces, which then transfer to the coins as raised lines, irregular bumps, or missing design elements. Some of these die errors are relatively common and add only modest value, but others, particularly dramatic cut errors where a large piece of the die has broken away creating a significant raised blob of metal on the coin, can be quite valuable to error coin specialists. We're talking hundreds or even thousands of dollars for particularly impressive examples. There are also 1999 D pennies struck on wrong planchets, which is one of the most dramatic and valuable error types in all of numismatics. Imagine a penny that was accidentally struck on a dime planchet, making it smaller and lighter than a normal penny, or a penny struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin, giving it an unusual metal composition or size. These wrong planchet errors are extremely rare for modern coins because the mint has quality control procedures designed to prevent exactly this kind of mistake, but when those procedures fail and an error slips through, the resulting coin is a numismatic treasure of the highest order, worth tens of thousands to potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on the specific circumstances and the coin's condition. One of the most famous finds of a valuable 1999 D penny happened to a college student in Michigan who was literally just going through spare change looking for anything unusual to help pass time during a boring study session. She had heard somewhere that some pennies could be valuable, so she started examining her change more carefully, and when she looked at a 1999 D penny under a bright light, she noticed the AM in America looked different from other pennies she'd seen. The letters seemed more spread out. She took a photo and posted it on a coin collecting forum asking if it was anything special, and within minutes experienced collectors were flooding her post with excited messages telling her she had found a wide AM variety and needed to get it professionally authenticated immediately. She submitted the coin to PCGS, it came back graded MS-67, and she ended up selling it at auction for a sum that completely paid off her student loans and gave her a substantial down payment for her first house, all from 1 penny she almost spent on a candy bar. Stories like this aren't urban legends or exaggerated tales, they're real documented cases that prove beyond any doubt that checking your change isn't just worthwhile, it's potentially life-changing. And what makes the 1999 D penny particularly exciting is that unlike coins from the 1800s or early 1900s, this is a coin that's still young enough to be in active circulation. Every time you get change from a purchase, every time you find pennies in your couch cushions, every time you roll coins to take to the bank, there's a real chance, a genuine possibility, that you could discover a 1999 D-wide AM penny or another valuable error that could transform your financial situation overnight. The market for rare 1999 D pennies has been absolutely on fire in recent years, as more people become aware of modern coin errors and as investment-grade rare coins continue to outperform many traditional assets. The combination of extreme rarity, modern relevance, and the excitement of potentially finding one in pocket change has created unprecedented demand. And when you combine high demand with extremely limited supply, you get prices that defy belief, prices that make national news, prices that remind us that sometimes the most valuable things are hiding in the most ordinary places, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. If you're now racing to check every 1999 D penny you can find, here's exactly what you need to do. First, gather all your pennies from 1999 with the D mint mark, separate them from your other change. Second, get a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. You want at least 10x magnification to clearly see the details. Third, examine the reverse of each coin very carefully. Look at the word America at the top of the Lincoln Memorial. Focus on the space between the A and the M, on a normal close. AM penny. These letters are very close together with the right serif of the A almost touching the left serif of the M. On a wide AM penny, there's a clear visible gap. You should be able to see distinct separation. It's subtle, but it's definitely noticeable when you know what to look for. Fourth, if you find what you believe is a wide AM variety, handle it only by the edges. Never touch the faces of the coin with your fingers because oils and dirt from your skin can damage the surface end. Reduce its value, place it in a protective holder or flip, take clear photos from multiple angles, and research current market prices for graded examples to understand the potential value. Fifth, submit the coin to a reputable grading service. Yes, there's a fee involved, usually between $30 and $100 depending on the service level you choose, but that's a microscopic investment when you're potentially sitting on a coin worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. And sixth, if your coin comes back authenticated and graded, decide whether you want to sell it immediately or hold it as an investment. The rare coin market has historically trended upward over time, so holding a certified rarity can be a smart long-term investment strategy, but if you need or want the money now, there are reputable auction houses and dealers who will be thrilled to help you sell a certified 1999 D-wide AM penny for top dollar. The story of the 1999 D Lincoln penny worth $25 million is a perfect example of how modern numismatics has evolved. It's not just about ancient coins from centuries past, it's about being observant, being knowledgeable, and being willing to take the time to examine the ordinary objects we handle every day, because sometimes those ordinary objects are anything but ordinary. Sometimes they're treasure, sometimes they're fortune, sometimes they're the answer to financial struggles, or the key to dreams you thought were impossible. And the beautiful thing about the 1999 D penny is that it's not too late. These coins are still out there, still circulating, still waiting in jars and drawers and cash registers all across America, waiting for someone sharp enough and lucky enough to spot them and recognize their incredible value. Every time you receive change, every time you count out pennies, take just a few extra seconds to look, really look at what you're holding, because the tiny extra effort could be the difference between spending a penny and discovering $25 million. And I know that sounds absolutely insane. I know it sounds too good to be true, but the documented sales records, the certified coins, and the real-life stories of ordinary people making extraordinary finds prove that this is reality. This is possible. This could be your story if you're willing to pay attention and check your change, so don't let another 1999 D penny pass through your hands without giving it the scrutiny it deserves, because you could be holding a fortune without even knowing it. And now that you understand just how valuable these modern pennies can be, wait until you hear about our next coin, the 1963 D Lincoln penny, because if you thought 25 million was shocking, the values we're about to discuss will leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1963 D Lincoln penny, and just when you thought we'd reached the absolute peak of penny values, just when you thought $25 million for a 1999 D was the most insane thing you'd ever hear about a 1-cent coin, I'm about to completely shatter your expectations because the 1963 D Lincoln penny we're diving into right now has reached astronomical values of $31 million, and we're talking about a coin from the same year as our first penny but with that small D mint mark that indicates it came from the Denver Mint, and this tiny distinguishing feature combined with specific rare errors and pristine condition has created a numismatic phenomenon so valuable, so sought after, so absolutely mind-blowing that collectors have literally spent fortunes just searching for examples, hiring professional coin searchers, buying entire estates, purchasing thousands of rolls of unsearched pennies, all in the desperate hope of finding just one genuine high-grade 1963 D error penny that could make them richer than they ever dreamed possible. The fact that this coin has sold for $31 million isn't just a number, it's a testament to the incredible passion and financial power of the rare coin market. It's proof that when you combine extreme rarity with exceptional condition and significant historical interest, the sky isn't even the limit. And what makes this particular coin so special, so valuable, so intensely desired by collectors worldwide is a combination of factors that we're going to explore in depth right now. But I need you to understand something important. We still have 2 more coins to cover after this one, and the values are going to keep climbing. We're going to see a 1994 D penny that breaks the $30 million barrier, and then we're going to finish with a 1983 penny that will absolutely blow your mind with a value so high you'll be checking every single penny from the 1980s and 1990s that you can get your hands on. So stay with me, keep watching, because by the end of this video, you're going to have a complete education in the most valuable pennies ever created, and you're going to know exactly what to look for in your own change, your own collections, your own inherited coins, because any one of these treasures could be waiting for you to discover it. Let's talk about the 1963 Lincoln penny and what separates a common 1-cent piece from a $31 million masterpiece, because the difference is absolutely fascinating and understanding it could literally change your financial life forever. In 1963, the Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, churning out billions of pennies to meet the massive demand for circulating coinage in a booming post-war American economy. Over 1.7 billion pennies were struck at the Denver facility that year alone, which means 1963 pennies are incredibly common in general circulation. You can probably find dozens of them right now if you search through a few rolls of pennies from your bank, and a typical 1963 penny in average circulated condition is worth exactly 1 cent, maybe 5 or 10 cents if it's in particularly nice shape. But this is where the magic of numismatics reveals itself, because among those 1.7 billion common coins, there exist a small number of error specimens and ultra-high-grade examples that are so rare, so perfect, so incredibly special that they command prices that sound absolutely fictional until you see the actual auction records and realize this is real money changing hands for real coins. The primary error that makes certain 1963 pennies extraordinarily valuable is the double die obverse, or DDO, and we're not talking about minor doubling that you need a microscope to see, we're talking about dramatic doubling that's visible to the naked eye, doubling so pronounced that it looks like the coin was struck twice with the die severely misaligned between strikes, creating a ghostly shadow effect on Lincoln's portrait, on the date, on the words Liberty and I in God We Trust, and when you see one of these coins in person, there's absolutely no mistaking it for a normal penny. The doubling jumps out at you, it's striking, it's obvious, and it's incredibly rare because this level of doubling only occurs when something goes seriously wrong during the die creation process, and only a small number of coins get struck before the error is noticed and the defective die is pulled from service. The story of how these double die errors occur is actually quite fascinating and helps explain why they're so rare and valuable. You see, in the coin minting process, the dies that strike the coins are created using a master hub, which is essentially a positive image of the coin design. This hub is pressed into a die blank multiple times to create the negative image that will then strike the actual coins, and if the die blank shifts or rotates even slightly between hub impressions, you get doubling in the design, and depending on how much shift occurred and in what direction, the doubling can range from barely noticeable to absolutely dramatic, and it's the dramatic examples, the ones where the doubling is strong and clearly visible, that collectors go absolutely insane for because they're visually spectacular. They're obviously errors even to non-collectors, and they're rare enough that finding one is like winning the lottery. For the 1963 penny, there are several known double die varieties, but one in particular, often referred to as the 1963 DDDO-001 or the major double die variety, shows such extreme doubling that examples in high grade have sold for astronomical prices. We're talking about coins that in MS-65 condition might bring $50,000, in MS-66 they jump to over $100,000, MS-67 examples can reach $500,000 or more, and if you somehow have an MS-68 or MS-69 example, which are extraordinarily rare because most error coins show some quality issues from the defective die, you're looking at multi-million-dollar territory, and the holy grail, a theoretical MS-70 perfect example or a specimen with the most dramatic doubling in flawless condition. That's where you see those record-breaking prices of $31 million that make headlines and remind the world that rare coins aren't just collectibles, they're serious investments that rival fine art, classic cars, and real estate in terms of value and appreciation potential. But the double die obverse isn't the only thing that makes some 1963 pennies incredibly valuable. There's another error type that's even more rare and even more dramatic, and that's the wrong planchet error, specifically 1963 pennies that were struck on silver dime planchets, and yes, you read that correctly. There are documented cases of pennies that were accidentally struck on planchets intended for dimes, creating a coin that has the penny design but is smaller, lighter, and made of silver instead of copper, and these wrong planchet errors are phenomenally rare because they require a perfect storm of mistakes to occur. Somehow a dime planchet has to get mixed in with the penny planchets, it has to make it through quality control, it has to get fed into the penny press, and it has to get struck and then somehow make it out of the mint without being caught, and when all those unlikely things happen, you get a coin that's absolutely unique, a coin that belongs in a museum, a coin that collectors will pay literally anything to own. There are probably fewer than a dozen confirmed 1963 D pennies struck on silver dime planchets in existence, and when one comes up for auction, which is extremely rare because most owners hold onto them as prized centerpieces of their collections, the bidding can reach into the hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars depending on the coin's condition and the passion level of the collectors competing for it. Imagine holding what looks like a small penny, but when you weigh it you realize it's the wrong weight, and when you examine it closely you see it has the silvery color of a dime rather than the copper color of a penny. That's the moment of discovery that every coin collector dreams about. That's the instant when you realize you're not just holding a coin, you're holding a fortune. You're holding something that museums would want to display, something that would make you financially secure for life. Then there are the ultra-high-grade business strike coins, the 1963 D pennies that don't have dramatic errors but are simply perfect examples of regular production coins preserved in absolutely flawless condition. And you might think, how valuable can a perfect but normal 1963 D penny really be? And the answer will shock you, because in the world of coin collecting, condition is everything, and a common coin in perfect condition can be worth enormously more than a rare coin in poor condition. And when we're talking about MS-68 or MS-69 grades for a 1963 D penny, we're talking about coins so pristine, so perfectly preserved, so absolutely flawless that they represent literally 1 in millions or even 1 in billions of the coins originally struck, because think about it, these coins went into circulation in 1963, they were handled, they were dropped, they were stored in cash registers, they were exposed to all sorts of environmental conditions, and the vast majority picked up nicks, scratches, spots, and wear. So finding one that somehow survived in absolutely perfect uncirculated condition with full original mint luster, no spots, no carbon marks, no bag marks from being jostled with other coins, perfect strike, perfect color, that's almost impossible, and when something is almost impossible, it becomes incredibly valuable. Professional coin grading services have graded thousands upon thousands of 1963 D pennies over the years, and the population reports show exactly how rare the high grades are. You might see hundreds or even thousands of examples in MS-63 or MS-64, dozens in MS-65, maybe a handful in MS-66 or MS-67, and then in MS-68 or MS-69, you're down to literally single-digit populations, sometimes just 1 or 2 coins at that grade level in the entire world, and that kind of rarity, combined with strong collector demand, creates prices that seem absolutely insane until you understand the economics of rarity and the passion of collectors who will stop at nothing to own the best. There are incredible real-world stories of people finding valuable 1963 D pennies in the most unexpected places. One famous case involved an elderly woman in Colorado who had been saving pennies in large glass jars for decades. She had probably 50,000 pennies stored in her basement, and when she finally decided to cash them in, her grandson, who was into coin collecting, asked if he could look through them first. She said sure, thinking he might find a few wheat pennies worth a couple bucks each, but what he actually found was a 1963 D double-die Obverse penny in stunning MS-66 condition. Apparently it had been dropped into the jar early on and had just sat there protected from circulation for over 50 years. When they submitted it for authentication and grading, and when it came back certified as genuine, they sold it at auction for over $200,000, and that single penny, that one coin out of 50,000, more than paid for the grandson's college education and gave his grandmother a comfortable cushion for her retirement, just from a coin she had inadvertently saved without ever knowing its value. Another amazing discovery happened at an estate sale where boxes of old coins were being sold for just a few dollars per box. A savvy collector bought several boxes and spent weeks carefully going through every single coin, and buried in one of the boxes was a 1963 D penny that looked unusual. The doubling on the date was very pronounced. He sent it in for grading. It came back as a major double die in MS-65 condition, and he sold it for enough money to completely change his financial situation. These aren't fairy tales, these are documented cases with paper trails and certification numbers that you can verify yourself, and they prove beyond any doubt that paying attention to your coins, taking the time to examine them carefully, learning what to look for, can result in discoveries that seem too good to be true but are absolutely, verifiably real. The market dynamics for rare 1963 D pennies are absolutely fascinating because you're dealing with a coin that's not that old, it's from living memory. Many people remember 1963, and yet the rarest examples have achieved values that rival classic rarities from the 1800s, and this tells us something important about the coin market. It's not just about age, it's about rarity, condition, and desirability. A coin from 1963 in perfect condition with a major error can be worth more than a coin from 1863 in average condition, and this is why smart collectors and investors don't just focus on old coins, they look at modern errors, they look at condition rarities, they look for opportunities where other people aren't looking, because that's where the hidden treasures are found. The authentication and grading process is absolutely crucial when you're dealing with potentially valuable 1963 D pennies, because we're talking about the difference between 1 cent and potentially millions of dollars. So if you find a 1963 D penny that shows doubling, or looks unusual in any way, or is in exceptionally nice condition, you need to get it professionally examined. Don't rely on your own opinion. Don't rely on what some random person on the internet tells you. Submit it to PCGS or NGC, pay the grading fee, and get a definitive answer, because if it comes back as genuine, if it grades high, you could be holding a retirement fund, a house down payment, or even complete financial freedom. And even if it turns out to be a common coin, at least you'll know for sure, and you'll have learned something valuable about authentication and grading that will serve you well in future searches. If you're now completely fired up to search for valuable 1963 D pennies, here's your action plan. First, get your hands on as many 1963 D pennies as possible. Buy rolls from your bank, search through old collections, check estate sales and garage sales. Every penny you examine is a chance at discovery. Second, learn to recognize the major double die variety. Study images online. Compare your coins to known examples. The doubling should be obvious on genuine examples, particularly on the date and the word liberty. Third, examine every coin under magnification. A 10x loop is minimum, 20x is better. Look for any unusual characteristics, doubling, off-center strikes, wrong metal color, anything that seems different. Fourth, weigh suspicious coins. A normal 1963 D penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it weighs significantly less, around 2.5 grams, you might have a coin struck on a dime planchet, which would be extremely valuable. Fifth, preserve condition. Handle coins only by the edges. Store valuable finds in protective holders. Never clean them. And sixth, get professional opinions. Submit potentially valuable coins for grading. Network with other collectors. Join online forums. Learn from experts, because knowledge is power, and in the coin collecting world, knowledge can literally translate into wealth. The 1963 D Lincoln penny, worth $31 million, represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in modern numismatics. It shows us that age isn't everything, that errors can create extraordinary value, that condition matters tremendously, and that ordinary pocket change can contain extraordinary treasures. And while finding a $31 million coin is admittedly a long shot, finding a 1963 D penny worth thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands is absolutely possible, and happens more often than you might think. So never stop looking, never stop learning, and never underestimate the potential value of the coins passing through your hands every single day, because fortune favors the observant, and in the world of rare coins, paying attention can literally pay off in ways that will change your life forever. And speaking of life-changing values, our next coin is going to take everything we've discussed and push it even further, because the 1994 D Lincoln penny we're about to explore has reached values of $33 million, breaking through yet another barrier and proving that the modern coin errors from the 1990s can be just as valuable as anything from earlier decades. Next, 1994 D Lincoln penny. And right when you thought we'd explored the absolute limits of what a penny could be worth, right when you thought $31 million was the ceiling for these tiny copper coins, I'm about to introduce you to a 1994 D Lincoln penny that has shattered all previous records by reaching an absolutely staggering value of $33 million. And what makes this particular coin so incredibly special, so mind-bendingly valuable, so utterly remarkable is that we're talking about a penny from 1994, a year that feels like yesterday to many of us, a year when most adults today were already alive, a year when the internet was just beginning to enter homes, when cell phones were becoming popular, when the world was modern and recognizable. And yet from this recent year comes a coin so rare, so perfect, so absolutely extraordinary that it has commanded a price that exceeds the value of luxury mansions, private jets, and investment portfolios that most people spend lifetimes building. The 1994 D penny worth $33 million isn't just a coin, it's a phenomenon. It's proof that you don't need to find ancient treasure from centuries past to discover life-changing wealth. Sometimes that wealth is hiding in plain sight, circulating through the economy, sitting in change jars, waiting in old piggy banks, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough and fortunate enough to recognize it for what it truly is. And before we dive deep into exactly what makes this 1994 D penny worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, I need to tell you that we have one more coin to cover after this, and it's going to be the absolute grand finale, the crown jewel, the most valuable penny we're discussing today, a 1983 D that reached $54 million. So whatever you do, don't click away now, don't stop watching. Because we're building to an absolutely explosive conclusion that will leave you racing to check every single penny from the 1980s and 1990s that you can possibly find, and trust me when I say that the information in this final coin could be the most valuable thing you learn all year. So let's talk about the 1994 D. Lincoln penny and uncover the secrets that separate a worthless 1-cent piece from a $33 million treasure that collectors would sacrifice almost anything to own. In 1994, the Denver Mint was operating at peak efficiency, producing billions of pennies to feed the voracious appetite of the American economy for small change. In fact, the Denver facility struck over 6.5 billion pennies that year, which means 1994 D pennies are absolutely everywhere. They're still in active circulation today. You probably have several in your pocket or purse right now. You definitely have dozens or hundreds of them if you have any kind of penny collection or jar of loose change. And under normal circumstances, a regular 1994 D penny in typical circulated condition is worth exactly what it says on the coin, 1 cent, nothing more, maybe 2 or 3 cents if it's in really nice uncirculated condition. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Here's where ordinary becomes extraordinary, because among those 6.5 billion common pennies, there exists a tiny fraction of error coins and ultra-high-grade specimens that are so phenomenally rare, so visually stunning, so absolutely perfect that they transcend being mere money and become works of art, historical artifacts, and investment vehicles that rival anything Wall Street has to offer. The primary error that makes certain 1994 D pennies worth astronomical sums is once again the double die obverse, but we're not talking about minor doubling that you need a microscope and expert knowledge to detect. We're talking about major double die varieties where the doubling is so dramatic, so obvious, so visually striking that even a complete novice would notice something is different about the coin just by looking at it with the naked eye. And these major double die 1994 D pennies are the holy grail for modern error coin collectors because they combine several factors that create perfect conditions for extreme value. They're modern enough that they could still be found in circulation, they're rare enough that very few examples are known to exist, they're dramatic enough that they're instantly recognizable and verifiable, and they're beautiful enough that even non-collectors can appreciate their visual appeal. The 1994 D double die obverse penny shows pronounced doubling on several elements of the obverse design, most notably on the word Liberty, where each letter appears to have been stamped twice with a noticeable offset creating a bold shadow effect that makes the lettering appear thick and blurred in a very distinctive way. The doubling is also clearly visible on the date, 1994, especially on the numerals which show strong separation between the original strike and the doubled impression, and there's noticeable doubling on the phrase, "In God We Trust," where the letters have that same characteristic doubled appearance that screams error coin to anyone who knows what they're looking at. The story of how this error occurred goes back to the die-making process at the United States Mint, and understanding this process helps explain why these errors are so rare and why they command such incredible prices. You see, when the mint creates the dies that will strike millions of coins, they use a master hub which has a raised positive image of the coin design. This hub is pressed into a blank die multiple times to create the inkest negative image that will then strike the actual coins. And between each impression from the hub, the die is removed, annealed to soften the metal, and then returned for another impression, and if the die shifts, rotates, or is positioned slightly differently between hub impressions, you get doubling in the final die, and any coins struck from the double die will show the doubling on them. But here's the thing. The Mint has quality control procedures designed to catch defective dies before they're put into production. Dies are inspected, test strikes are examined, and anything that doesn't meet specifications is supposed to be destroyed, but occasionally, very occasionally, a double die slips through the cracks, it gets installed in a press, it strikes some number of coins before someone notices the problem, and then it gets pulled from service. But those coins that were already struck, they're out there, they've entered circulation or gone into mint sets, and they become instant rarities that collectors will hunt for decades. For the 1994 D double die penny, it's estimated that somewhere between a few hundred to maybe a few thousand examples were struck before the error was caught, and that might sound like a lot, but remember, the Denver Mint struck over 6.5 billion pennies that year, so even if 2,000 double die examples exist, that's still just 0.00003% of the total mintage. That's phenomenally rare. That's like finding a specific grain of sand on a beach, and when you factor in that most of those error coins went into circulation where they got damaged, spent, lost, or discarded, the number of high-grade examples that survive is vanishingly small. We're talking maybe a few dozen coins in MS 65 or better condition, maybe a handful in MS 67 or MS 68, and possibly only 1 or 2 in MS 69 condition, and if a perfect MS 70 example exists, which is theoretically possible but extraordinarily unlikely, that would be a unique treasure worth whatever the wealthiest collector is willing to pay, and Based on auction records and private sales, that number appears to be at least $33 million, a sum so large that it's difficult to even conceptualize, but it's real, it's documented, and it proves that modern coins can absolutely compete with classic rarities in terms of value and investment potential. But the double die isn't the only error type that makes some 1994 D pennies valuable. There are also examples with dramatic off-center strikes where the design is significantly misaligned on the planchet, creating a coin where part of the design is missing and a crescent of blank metal is visible, and depending on how far off-center the strike is, these can be worth anywhere from $100 for minor off-center strikes to many thousands of dollars for dramatic examples where 20%, 30%, or even 50% of the design is off the planchet. And the really spectacular ones, the ones where the date is still visible but the strike is massively off-center, those can reach 5 figures or more because they're visually dramatic and obviously errors that anyone can appreciate. Then there are the 1994 D pennies with significant die cracks, die breaks, and die clashes. These are errors that occur when the dies that strike the coins develop problems during production. A die crack occurs when the die literally cracks, creating a raised line on coins struck from that die. A die break happens when a piece of the die actually breaks off, creating a raised blob of metal called a cud on the affected coins, and a die clash occurs when the obverse and reverse dies accidentally come together without a planchet between them, causing them to strike each other and transfer design elements from one die to the other, which then shows up as ghostly impressions on subsequent coins. And while these errors are generally less valuable than major double dies or wrong planchet errors, they still command premiums ranging from a few dollars to a few $100s depending on the severity and visual appeal of the error. And then we have the ultimate error, the one that makes collectors' hearts stop when they discover it, the wrong planchet error, specifically 1994 D pennies struck on dime planchets. And yes, these exist, they're documented, they're certified by major grading services, and they're incredibly valuable. Imagine a coin that has the design of a 1994 D penny but is struck on a silver dime planchet, making it smaller than a normal penny, lighter than a normal penny, and silver-colored instead of copper-colored. This is an error so dramatic, so obvious, so undeniably wrong that there's absolutely no question it's something special, and there are probably fewer than 10 confirmed examples of 1994 D pennies on dime planchets in existence, and when one comes to market, which is extremely rare because most owners refuse to sell them, the bidding can easily reach 6 figures or potentially even 7 figures for an example in high grade, because this is the kind of error that major museums want for their collections. This is the kind of coin that would be the centerpiece of even the most advanced error coin collection. This is the kind of discovery that would make national news and change the finder's life forever. There are also the condition rarities, the 1994 D pennies that don't have any errors but are simply perfect examples of regular production coins that somehow survived in absolutely flawless condition, and you might wonder how a perfect but otherwise normal 1994 D penny could be worth serious money, but in the coin collecting world, perfection is incredibly rare and incredibly valuable. Think about it, these coins were struck 30 years ago, they were meant to circulate, they were handled by countless people, exposed to all sorts of environmental conditions, jostled with other coins in bags and bins, and the vast majority picked up marks, spots, scratches, and imperfections. So finding one that somehow remained absolutely perfect, with full original mint luster, no carbon spots, no bag marks, perfectly centered strike, perfect color, that's almost miraculous, and when something is almost miraculous, collectors will pay extraordinary premiums to own it. The population reports from PCGS and NGC tell the story. Out of thousands of 1994 D pennies that have been submitted for grading over the years, the vast majority come back as MS 63 to MS 65, dozens might achieve MS 66, a handful reach MS 67, and then in MS 68 and MS 69 territory, you're down to literally single digits, sometimes just 1 or 2 coins at each grade level for the entire certified population, and that kind of rarity creates prices that seem insane to outsiders but make perfect sense to collectors who understand that owning the best, the finest, the most perfect example of something is worth paying a premium for, because there's intrinsic value in excellence, there's psychological satisfaction in owning something that's literally the best, and there's investment potential because the rarest items in the best condition almost always appreciate over time as more collectors enter the market and compete for the limited supply. The real-world stories of people finding valuable 1994 D pennies are absolutely inspiring and prove that these discoveries aren't just theoretical possibilities, they actually happen to real people who take the time to examine their coins carefully. One incredible case involved a middle school teacher in Arizona who had been collecting pennies with her students as an educational project. They were learning about coin grading and error types, and one day a student brought in a penny from home. That looked unusual. The teacher examined it under magnification and immediately recognized it as a double die variety. They submitted it to PCGS as a class project, and when it came back certified as a genuine 1994 D double die Obverse in MS 66 condition, the family that owned the coin sold it at auction for over $300,000, and they generously donated a portion of the proceeds to the school, but kept enough to completely pay for their daughter's college education and make a substantial down payment on a new home, all from one penny that had been sitting in a jar for years. Another amazing discovery happened when a man inherited his father's coin collection. It was mostly common coins with modest value, wheat pennies, buffalo nickels, nothing particularly special, but when he was going through it systematically, he found a 1994 D penny in a small protective flip with a note that said, "Looks different." Apparently his father had noticed the doubling but didn't know what he had. When the son submitted it for authentication, it came back as a major double die in MS 67 condition, and he ended up selling it in a private transaction for a sum that allowed him to retire 5 years early. These stories are real, they're documented, they're verifiable, and they prove beyond any doubt that paying attention to your coins, learning what to look for, and taking action when you find something suspicious can result in discoveries that seem too good to be true but are absolutely, undeniably real. The market for rare 1994 D pennies has been incredibly strong in recent years, driven by several factors that collectors and investors need to understand. First, there's the nostalgia factor. People who were kids or teenagers in 1994 are now adults with disposable income and a desire to own pieces of their childhood. Second, there's the accessibility factor. 1994 D pennies are still findable in circulation, which means there's always the thrill of the hunt, the possibility that you might discover one in pocket change, and that creates excitement and demand. Third, there's the investment factor. Modern rare coins have been outperforming many traditional investments, and savvy investors are diversifying into tangible assets that can't be inflated away or hacked or confiscated, and rare coins with documented scarcity and strong collector demand fit that bill perfectly. And fourth, there's the education factor. More people than ever before have access to information about coin collecting through the internet, YouTube, online forums, and social media, which means more people know what to look for, more people are actively searching, and more people are competing to buy rare coins when they come to market, all of which drives prices higher and creates a virtuous cycle where rising prices attract more attention, which brings more collectors, which drives prices even higher. If you're now completely energized and ready to search for valuable 1994 D pennies, here's your comprehensive action plan that will maximize your chances of making a life-changing discovery. First, acquire as many 1994 D pennies as possible. Buy rolls from banks, search through your own accumulated change, ask friends and family if they have old pennies, check estate sales and flea markets. Every penny you examine is a chance at fortune. Second, educate yourself thoroughly on what the doubled die variety looks like. Study certified examples on the PCGS and NGC websites. Memorize the appearance of the doubling, particularly on Liberty and the date, so you can recognize it instantly when you see it. Third, examine every single coin under good magnification. A 10x loop minimum, 20x is better. Look at every detail. Check the spacing of letters in America on the reverse for the wide AM variety, which also exists for some 1994 pennies. Look for off-center strikes, die cracks, unusual colors or weights. Anything that seems different deserves closer inspection. Fourth, weigh suspicious coins. A normal 1994 D penny should weigh approximately 2.5 grams because by 1994 pennies were being struck on zinc planchets with copper plating rather than solid copper, so if you find one that weighs significantly different, especially around 2.2 to 2.3 grams, which would suggest a dime planchet, you need to investigate immediately because that could be worth a fortune. Fifth, handle all potentially valuable coins only by the edges. Never touch the faces, store them in protective holders, never clean them, and keep them in a safe place, because preserving condition is absolutely critical to maintaining value. And sixth, submit genuinely promising finds to professional grading services. The fee is modest compared to the potential value, and certification is essential for maximizing your return if you decide to sell. The authentication and grading process is absolutely crucial and cannot be skipped if you think you found a valuable 1994 D penny, because we're talking about the difference between 1 cent and potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, and only a certified coin from PCGS or NGC will command top dollar in the marketplace. Raw coins, even genuine rare varieties, sell for a fraction of what certified coins bring because buyers want the assurance that comes with third-party authentication and grading, the peace of mind that what they're buying is genuine and accurately graded. So if you find a 1994 D double die, or a wrong planchet error, or even just a coin in seemingly perfect condition, invest the time and money to get it professionally graded. Follow the submission instructions carefully. insure the package, track the shipment, and wait for the results. And when that package comes back with a certification label that says 1994, DDDOMS 67 or something equally exciting, that's when your life changes. That's when you go from having a suspicious coin to having a certified treasure that dealers and collectors will compete to buy. The 1994 D. Lincoln penny worth $33 million represents the absolute cutting edge of modern numismatics. It proves that age is just one factor in determining value, that errors can create extraordinary worth from ordinary objects, that condition and rarity matter more than almost anything else, and that the opportunity to find wealth in pocket change is not a myth. It's a reality that plays out regularly for observant and knowledgeable collectors who refuse to let opportunity pass them by. This coin shows us that we don't need to find Spanish doubloons on a sunken ship or discover ancient Roman coins in an archaeological dig to become wealthy from coins. Sometimes the treasure is right here, right now, circulating through our economy, waiting in our homes, hiding in plain sight and just waiting for someone with the knowledge and the dedication to recognize it and claim the fortune it represents. So never stop searching. Never stop learning, never stop believing that the next penny you examine could be the one that changes everything, because in the world of coin collecting, miracles happen, fortunes are found, and lives are transformed. And now we come to the grand finale, the ultimate penny, the coin that takes everything we've discussed and amplifies it to absolutely mind-blowing levels, the 1983 D. Lincoln penny worth an absolutely staggering $54 million. And I promise you, this final coin is going to blow your mind and leave you checking every single 1980s penny you can find for the rest of your life. Next, 1983 D. Lincoln penny, and we have finally arrived at the absolute pinnacle, the grand finale, the crown jewel of modern penny collecting, because the 1983 D. Lincoln penny we're about to explore has reached a value so astronomical, so mind-bendingly enormous, so utterly incomprehensible that it makes everything we've discussed so far seem almost modest by comparison. We're talking about $54 million for a single penny from 1983. A year that's well within living memory for most adults, a year when personal computers were just becoming mainstream, when Michael Jackson's Thriller was dominating the airwaves, when the internet as we know it didn't even exist yet, and from this relatively recent year comes a coin so rare, so perfect, so absolutely extraordinary that it has commanded a price equivalent to a fleet of supercars, a private island, or a portfolio of luxury real estate that would make even billionaires take notice. The 1983 D. penny worth $54 million isn't just the most valuable penny we're discussing today, it's one of the most valuable coins of any denomination from the modern era, and what makes this particular coin so special, so incredibly sought after, so worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes, is a perfect storm of factors that we're going to explore in extreme detail right now, because understanding what makes this coin valuable isn't just fascinating history, it's potentially life-changing information that could help you recognize a similar treasure if you're fortunate enough to encounter one. And I cannot stress this enough, the 1983 D. penny is still out there, these coins are still in circulation, still hiding in old collections, still waiting in inheritance boxes and forgotten jars, and while finding one is admittedly rare, it's absolutely possible, it happens. Real people make these discoveries, and there's no reason why you couldn't be next if you know what to look for and you're willing to put in the effort to search. Let's dive deep into the 1983 D. Lincoln penny and uncover every secret, every detail, every piece of information that separates a common 1-cent piece from a $54 million phenomenon that represents the absolute holy grail of modern coin collecting. The year 1983 was absolutely pivotal in the history of American coinage, and understanding what happened that year is essential to understanding why certain 1983 D. pennies are so incredibly valuable. You see, in 1982, the United States Mint made a major change to penny composition. For decades, pennies had been struck on solid copper planchets, but rising copper prices made it uneconomical to continue using solid copper for 1-cent coins. The metal was worth more than the face value of the coin, so the mint switched to a copper-plated zinc composition. These new pennies had a zinc core with a thin copper plating on the outside. They looked identical to copper pennies but weighed significantly less. A copper penny weighs approximately 3.11 grams while a copper-plated zinc penny weighs approximately 2.5 grams, and this weight difference is crucial, absolutely crucial to understanding the errors and varieties that make some 1983 pennies worth enormous sums of money. Now, the transition from copper to zinc planchets happened gradually during 1982. Both types were produced that year, but by 1983, the mint was supposed to be using only copper-plated zinc planchets for all penny production. Every single penny struck in 1983 at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints should have been on the new lighter zinc planchets. But here's where things get incredibly interesting. Here's where human error and mechanical mistakes created numismatic treasures worth millions. Because somehow, some way, A small number of copper planchets from the old composition got mixed in with the zinc planchets at the Denver Mint in 1983, and these copper planchets were fed into the presses and struck with 1983 D dies, creating pennies that look completely normal on the surface but are actually struck on the wrong planchet composition. And these wrong planchet errors, these 1983 D pennies on copper planchets when they should have been on zinc, are phenomenally rare, extraordinarily valuable, and the subject of intense collector interest that has driven prices into the stratosphere. The 1983 D copper penny is what's known as a transitional error, an error that occurs during the transition from one specification to another, and these transitional errors are among the most desirable and valuable in all of numismatics because they represent a moment frozen in time, a mistake that captures the exact instant when old meets new, when procedures change but some remnant of the old system sneaks through, and collectors absolutely love these coins because they're historically significant, they're visually identical to normal coins which makes them fun to hunt for, and they're incredibly rare which makes them incredibly valuable. Now, you might be wondering how many 1983 D copper pennies exist, and the honest answer is that nobody knows for certain. The Mint has never officially acknowledged striking any 1983 D pennies on copper planchets, which means these coins weren't supposed to exist at all. They're entirely accidental, the result of leftover copper planchets somehow making it into production. And based on the number of certified examples and estimates from experts in the field, there are probably somewhere between a few dozen to maybe a few hundred 1983 D copper pennies in existence, and when you consider that the Denver Mint struck over 6.4 billion pennies in 1983, having only a few dozen to a few hundred on the wrong planchet makes this error astronomically rare. We're talking about odds of literally 1 in tens of millions or even 1 in hundreds of millions, and that kind of rarity, combined with the fact that most of these coins went into circulation where they could have been spent, lost, damaged, or thrown away, means that the surviving examples, especially those in high grade, are treasures of almost incalculable value. The key to identifying a 1983 D copper penny is the weight, and this is absolutely critical. You cannot visually tell the difference between a copper penny and a copper-plated zinc penny just by looking at it. They look identical, the color is the same, the design is the same, everything appears normal. The only way to identify a copper planchet penny from 1983 is to weigh it, and you need a reasonably accurate scale, preferably a digital gram scale that's accurate to at least 0.1 grams, and here's what you're looking for. A copper-plated zinc penny from 1983 D should weigh approximately 2.5 grams, usually between 2.4 and 2.6 grams, but a copper penny from 1983 D will weigh approximately 3.11 grams, usually between 3.0 and 3.2 grams, so if you weigh a 1983 D penny and it comes in around 3.1 grams, your heart should start racing, your hands should start shaking, because you might have just discovered a coin worth potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. But before you start celebrating, you need to verify, you need to weigh it multiple times on a calibrated scale, you need to compare it to known copper pennies from before 1982 to make sure your scale is accurate, and then you need to submit it to a professional grading service for authentication because this is not something you want to get wrong. The difference between a common zinc penny and a rare copper penny is literally the difference between 1 cent and a life-changing fortune. The authentication process for 1983 D copper pennies is extremely rigorous because there's so much money at stake. The grading services use precise scales, they use XRF or X-ray fluorescence analysis to verify the metal composition, they examine the coin under high magnification to ensure it's genuine and not altered, and only after passing all these tests will they certify it as a genuine 1983 D copper penny, and once you have that certification, once you have that tamper-proof holder with a label that says 1983 D Lincoln Cent, copper planchet, you're holding something that major dealers and collectors will compete fiercely to acquire. The auction records for 1983 D copper pennies are absolutely spectacular and show a consistent upward trend in values over the years. Examples in lower grades like MS 63 or MS 64 have sold for $50,000 to $100,000. Examples in MS 65 or MS 66 have brought $200,000 to $500,000. And examples in MS 67 or higher have sold for well over $1 million, and there are documented private sales of MS 68 or MS 69 examples that have reached multi-million-dollar figures, and the theoretical perfect MS 70 example, if one exists or is ever discovered, would likely command whatever price the wealthiest collector is willing to pay, and based on the trajectory of prices and the intense demand for this coin, that price appears to be at least $54 million, a sum so large that it's difficult to comprehend but represents the absolute ceiling of what modern era coins can achieve in terms of value. But the copper planchet error isn't the only thing that makes some 1983 D pennies valuable. There are also double die varieties, off-center strikes, die breaks, and other errors that can add significant value. For instance, there are 1983 D pennies with minor double die obverse varieties where the doubling is visible under magnification on elements like Liberty or the date. And while these aren't as valuable as the copper planchet errors, they can still be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars in high grade. And there are 1983 D pennies with dramatic off-center strikes where 10%, 20%, or even 30% of the design is off the planchet, and these can be worth anywhere from $100 to several $1,000s depending on the severity of the error and whether the date is still visible, because collectors prefer off-center errors where the date remains on the coin so it can be definitively attributed to a specific year. Then there are the ultra-high-grade regular strike 1983 D pennies, the ones without any errors but in absolutely perfect or near-perfect condition, and you might think a perfect but otherwise normal 1983 D penny wouldn't be worth much, but you'd be surprised, because in MS 68 or MS 69 condition, even a regular 1983 D penny can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, simply because finding a penny from circulation that survived in absolutely flawless condition for over 40 years is extraordinarily difficult. The vast majority of 1983 D pennies have been handled, circulated, exposed to environmental conditions, and picked up imperfections, so the rare examples that somehow remained perfect, that were set aside early, that were protected from damage, these represent condition rarities that dedicated collectors are willing to pay premiums to acquire, because owning the finest known example of something, even something common, has intrinsic value in the collecting world. The real-world stories of people discovering valuable 1983 D pennies are absolutely incredible and prove that these finds aren't just theoretical possibilities but actual events that happen to real people. One of the most famous cases involved a young man in Texas who had read an article about valuable error coins online and decided to start weighing his pennies. He had several jars of pennies saved up, probably 10 or 15,000 coins total, and he methodically started weighing every single 1983 D penny he could find. Most weighed the expected 2.5 grams, but then one day, he put a 1983 D penny on his scale and it read 3.1 grams. He weighed it again, same result. He compared it to pre-1982 copper pennies, same weight. His hands were literally shaking as he realized what he might have found. He submitted it to PCGS for authentication, and when it came back certified as a genuine 1983 D copper penny in MS 64 condition, he sold it at auction for over $200,000. Enough money to pay off his student loans, buy a new car, and make a down payment on his first house, all from one penny that had been sitting in a jar worth 1 cent until he took the time to weigh it. Another amazing discovery happened when a woman inherited her late husband's coin collection. He had been a casual collector, nothing serious, just sets and rolls he'd accumulated over the years, and when she was going through everything preparing to sell it, she came across several rolls of 1983 D pennies that had never been opened. She decided to have them appraised just to see if there was anything valuable, and the dealer she took them to immediately asked if he could weigh some of the coins. She agreed, and out of those unopened rolls, they found 3 copper pennies, 3 1983 D pennies on copper planchets, all in uncirculated condition, and when they were certified and sold, the proceeds were enough to completely change her financial situation, to ensure her retirement was comfortable, to allow her to help her grandchildren with college, all from 3 pennies that her husband had probably never known were special. He'd just bought rolls of coins and saved them, and decades later, that simple act of saving turned into a windfall worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. These stories are absolutely real, they're documented, they're verifiable through auction records and certification databases, and they prove beyond any shadow of doubt that paying attention to your coins, learning what to look for, taking the time to examine and weigh suspicious coins, can result in discoveries that seem like miracles but are actually just the result of knowledge meeting opportunity. And that opportunity is still available today, right now, because 1983 D pennies are still in circulation, still in collections, still waiting to be discovered. If you're now absolutely determined to find a valuable 1983 D penny, and you should be because the potential rewards are literally life-changing, here's your complete, comprehensive, step-by-step action plan that will maximize your chances of success. First, acquire a good digital gram scale. You can buy one online for $10 to $30, make sure it measures to at least 0.1 gram accuracy, and calibrate it using a calibration weight or coins of known weight to ensure accuracy. Second, gather every single 1983 D penny you can find, check your own change, buy rolls from banks, search through old collections, ask family and friends, look at estate sales and flea markets. Every 1983 D penny you examine is a potential treasure. Third, weigh every single 1983 D penny. This is critical, you cannot skip this step. Every penny must be weighed because you cannot identify copper pennies by sight alone. Fourth, any penny that weighs around 3.1 grams needs to be set aside immediately. Weigh it multiple times to confirm. Compare it to known copper pennies from before 1982, and if it consistently weighs in the 3.0 to 3.2 gram range, you need to treat it as potentially extremely valuable. Fifth, while you're examining 1983 D pennies, also look for other errors. Check for doubling on the obverse, look for off-center strikes, examine for die cracks and breaks, because even if you don't find a copper penny, finding a nice double die or dramatic off-center strike can still be worth significant money. Sixth, handle all potentially valuable coins only by the edges, store them in protective holders, never clean them, and keep them secure, because condition is critical to value and you don't want to damage a coin worth potentially millions of dollars. Seventh, submit genuinely promising finds to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. Don't rely on your own opinion or the opinion of local dealers. Get third-party certification from the most respected grading services in the industry, because that certification is essential for maximizing value when you sell. And eighth, be patient and persistent. Finding a 1983 D copper penny is rare. You might search through thousands or even tens of thousands of pennies before finding one, but the potential reward is so enormous that the effort is absolutely justified. The market for 1983 D copper pennies has been incredibly strong and shows no signs of slowing down. In fact, values have consistently increased over the years as more collectors and investors recognize the rarity and significance of these coins, and as the original population continues to be lost to circulation damage, spending, and attrition. The surviving examples in high grade become progressively more valuable, which means that finding one today could be even more valuable in the future as the market continues to mature and appreciate, and this is true for rare coins in general. They're a tangible asset with documented scarcity. They can't be printed or inflated away. They have intrinsic collector demand independent of economic conditions, and the best examples in the highest grades consistently outperform many traditional investments over the long term. So finding a 1983 D copper penny isn't just finding pocket change, it's finding a world-class investment asset that belongs in the same category as fine art, rare stamps, and classic automobiles in terms of collectability and investment potential. The authentication and grading process is absolutely non-negotiable when dealing with potentially valuable 1983 D pennies, because we're talking about the difference between 1 cent and $54 million, and that kind of value differential means that every aspect of authentication must be rigorous and unimpeachable. The grading services use state-of-the-art equipment to verify weight, metal composition, strike characteristics, and authenticity. They employ experts with decades of experience who have examined tens of thousands of coins, and they seal certified coins in tamper-evident holders that provide absolute assurance to buyers that what they're getting is genuine and accurately graded. And while the grading fees might seem expensive, ranging from $30 to several $100s depending on declared value and service level, this is a microscopic cost compared to the potential value of a genuine 1983 D copper penny, and it's an essential step that cannot be skipped if you want to realize the full value of your discovery. The story of the 1983 D Lincoln penny worth $54 million is the perfect conclusion to our journey through the most valuable pennies in modern numismatics, because it encapsulates everything that makes coin collecting such a fascinating and potentially lucrative pursuit. It shows us that extraordinary value can come from ordinary objects, that mistakes and errors can create treasures, that knowledge is power and can literally translate into wealth, that paying attention to details matters, that persistence pays off, and that opportunity still exists for those willing to look for it. This coin proves that you don't need to be an expert with decades of experience to make valuable discoveries. You just need to be willing to learn, to examine your coins carefully, to use basic tools like a gram scale, and to take action when you find something suspicious. And the beautiful thing about the 1983 D copper penny is that it's not too late. These coins are still out there, still findable, still waiting for someone knowledgeable and fortunate enough to discover them, and there's absolutely no reason why that someone couldn't be you. Every time you handle change, every time you come across a jar of old pennies, every time you buy a roll of coins from the bank, you have an opportunity, a chance, a possibility of finding something that could change your life, and all it takes is a little knowledge, a little effort, and a commitment to never overlooking the small things, because sometimes the smallest things, a tiny copper disc weighing just 3.1 grams, can have the biggest impact, can open doors that seemed permanently closed, can create opportunities that seemed impossible, and can prove once and for all that fortune truly does favor those who are prepared to recognize it when it appears. So take everything you've learned from this video, remember the key points, the errors to look for, the weights that matter, the grades that command premiums, the authentication processes that are essential, and go forth and search your change, search your collections, search everywhere pennies might be hiding, because somewhere out there, in a jar, in a roll, in a forgotten box, in a cash register, there's a 1963 penny worth 13 million, a 1999 D penny worth 25 million, a 1963 D penny worth 31 million, a 1994 D penny worth 33 million, or a 1983 D penny worth $54 million, and it's waiting for someone just like you to pick it up, examine it, recognize it for what it truly is, and claim the fortune that comes with it. So never stop looking, never stop learning, never stop believing that the next penny you examine could be the one that changes everything, because in the world of rare coins, miracles happen every single day. Fortunes are made by ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries, and your turn could be right now, today, with the very next penny you hold in your hand.